Everything you see from the Jets is just weird. We have to win now. I think the GM feels pressure to win now. Otherwise, he may lose his job. The head coach feels pressure to win now because he may lose his job. Aaron Rodgers feels pressure to win now because he's coming to the end of his career. I think they feel like they have got to do something big and bold and exciting.
You are looking live at VSiN PrimeTime. Live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas, here's Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel.
Looking at your penultimate mock draft, you will have one more still to come. I guess the biggest surprise early on to me in your draft would be Brock Bowers at 6 to the New York Giants. We've seen some money come in on his under 11.5 here at Circa, heavily juiced now to the under. We had heard that maybe the Jets, Rob, could be the landing spot, but you think it's their co-inhabitant of MetLife Stadium.
Listen, I think over the last few weeks, people have tried to convince themselves that because of the value of tight ends and maybe the history with the drafted tight ends, I understand all of that stuff, that Brock Bowers is not going to be a top 10 pick or whatever. And I keep seeing these mock drafts where he lasts to the teens or even the late teens. It ain't going to happen. Brock Bowers is too good. Somebody mentioned me today that he's essentially Christian McCaffrey at tight end, that you can just move him around everywhere, that he can be a number one receiver if you need him to be. And there are teams, I think, look, you look at the Giants at number 6, the Titans at number 7, the Bears at number 9. Listen, I won't even be that surprised. Terry Fontenot, the Falcons GM, yes, he took a tight end in the first round in the top 5 just a few years ago. He always goes best player available. I think nearly every team is going to have Brock Bowers amongst the 7 best players in this draft. So I don't see him getting anywhere close to outside of the top 10. I think the Jets is his floor at number 10. And if he lasts to number 10, the Jets will be popping champagne and celebrating a job well done that they've got Brock Bowers.
You also, speaking of the Jets, I think you got him trading up to number 5 for Malik Neighbors. What's the logic behind that move?
Everything you see from the Jets is just weird. We have to win now. I think the GM feels pressure to win now. Otherwise, he may lose his job. The head coach feels pressure to win now because he may lose his job. Aaron Rodgers feels pressure to win now because he's coming to the end of his career. And the first season with the Jets didn't work out because of injury. I think they feel like they have got to do something big and bold and exciting. And if they can't trade up, then I guess they'll just have to sit at number 10. And whether it is Bowers, whether it's Odunze, whether it's, okay, all of the receivers and the tight ends gone, so we'll take an offensive lineman like Fuaga, for example, from Oregon State, that they'll just have to do that. But if they can get up and go and get a big name receiver in the top 5, whether that is Malik Neighbors, whether that's Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the Jets will at least have a look in that.
We're talking to Rob Staton, SeahawksDraftBlog.com, breaking down the NFL draft with him. And another thing that jumped out as we showed your top 10, and people can get your full mock draft at your website, is you do not have Joe Alt going as the first offensive lineman. Currently, the market sits at minus 700 for him to be that first offensive lineman. So is this from what you've heard or doing the due diligence? What's your kind of feel on the top offensive lineman? Because there were a couple whispers out there that maybe it wasn't Joe Alt, but the market hasn't reflected that. So what ultimately led to you not having Joe Alt as your first offensive lineman selected?
I think it's about teams and picking their poison. Like, there will be some teams that prefer Joe Alt as the top offensive lineman, and they will go for him. And then I think there are others that will just think, you know what, a 6'8" offensive tackle who may have some issues with leverage at the next level isn't what we want to do. And, last year, my top offensive tackle on the board that I put together based on months and months of study was Darnell Wright. And the Bears took him number 9. I don't think many people necessarily expected the Bears to take Darnell Wright at number 9, but I thought he was top 10 worthy. So I'm going with that hunch again, that the Bears may well look at Troy Fautanu, who I really, really like. I know there's been a bit of talk about potential medical issues there, but his football character's amazing. His tape is unbelievable. He's highly aggressive. He tested well at the combine. For me, he's the complete package, and I think Fautanu's a left tackle. I don't think I think you can play him at guard, but why waste a good left tackle playing at guard? So I do think some teams in the top 15, whether that is Chicago, whether it's Denver, not Denver, sorry, New Orleans, they could look certainly at Furtado as a left tackle candidate.
All right, so as we gotten closer to the draft, I think one of the things that has stuck out to me, Rob, is the fact that the chatter around Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy, and inside of the top 5 is somewhat quieted. Your mock draft would reflect that. Is that kind of your thinking, obviously, as well, that he might end up with Minnesota, but outside of the top 5 is starting to pick up a little bit more traction?
I just don't really understand this whole situation, and have never understood it. J.J. McCarthy, you only have to listen to one interview with him. I listened to the interview that he did at the Combine, and you sit there and you go, what a guy. I can well imagine owners sitting down with J.J. McCarthy and saying, I want this person to be the face and voice of our franchise. And I suspect there are a lot of teams who feel that way. But then you put on the tape, and I'm sorry, for me, I'm not seeing it. Like, if you're a team that needs a quarterback and you had your native pick was in the top 5, and you said, we really believe in this guy, we're just going to take him. Okay, fine. It's a quarterback league. You can understand that. But the idea of trading or using, let's say, 3 first-round picks to get J.J. McCarthy based on what he showed on tape, I just don't understand that whatsoever. I mean, for me, he is second-round prospect. So I'm not sure whether teams are necessarily going to be busting a gut to move up. Maybe they're so desperate. Maybe Sean Payton's going to be so desperate he's going to throw away Patrick Surtain and move into the top 5 to go and get J.J. McCarthy. And maybe Minnesota will spend all these picks to go and get him as well. But I don't know. I think there might be a little bit more modesty here and letting the situation come to them. And if teams don't fear the Giants at number 6 for J.J. McCarthy, there seems very little reason to trade into the top 4, let's say, to go and get him.
Rob Staton joining us here on VSiN Primetime. Last year was a little easier to kind of, maybe Devin Witherspoon wasn't that we knew would happen, but you had a really good feel of what they would not do, that being the Seahawks, a team that you cover very closely. So right now they currently own the 16th selection in this draft. What have you been able to pick up for Seattle, and what's your feel right now on what direction John Schneider and company could be headed there in a new era, right? The McDonald era moving forward.
The 2 names that I've focused on the most are Troy Fautanu and Taliese Fuaga. If either of those players last to number 16, I think there's a really good chance the Seahawks will stick and pick those players. If those 2 players are gone, and I kind of suspect they will be, then I think that could be the trigger move to trade down. And if they do trade down, I think it brings a lot of different options onto the table. So is a Graham Barton still there? Could they go and add him? Because they really need to improve that offensive line. That's a priority need. So if Barton gets past, say, the Steelers and the Dolphins and the Seahawks trade into the 20s, then he could be an option. But alternatively, it just seems to me that because the quarterbacks are getting bumped up and you're going to see a lot of receivers going early, Brock Bowers, a whole bunch of offensive linemen, that defensive players, namely pass rushers, who might have been top 10 picks a year ago, are going to be available maybe even in the early 20s. And that the Seahawks may move down and actually see value there as well. So I do think they've got a lot of options there. Their policy has been best player available in high character. So I'd keep an eye on people like Graham Barton, but I'd also have a look at people like Darius Robinson. I think he will appeal to the Seahawks. Jared Verse, I think, will appeal to the Seahawks. Chop Robinson. Players like that if they go defense.
Byron Murphy out of Texas has been one of the buzz names here in the last few days. Where do you expect him to end up?
Well, he, as you say, he's the buzz name. And if you believe the buzz, he's going to end up potentially in the top 10. But then if you get out of the top 10, there's a whole bunch of teams that could look at him. Sean Payton was with New Orleans when they took Sheldon Rankins in that kind of range. So he could easily take Byron Murphy there. Yeah, it wouldn't be a huge shock if there was a surprise like the Colts took him or something as just the best player available. Yeah, I know the Bears have invested in their interior defensive line, but they've got to get the best pass rusher available to help Montez Sweat. And maybe they just determined that Byron Murphy's that guy. And, Atlanta, okay, they've had Grady Jarrett for a long time, but their coach has gone there and he's used to working with Aaron Donald. And if he sees anything in Byron Murphy that makes him think, he can have the kind of impact on our defense, or like 2/3 of the impact that Aaron Donald had, then they may feel that we've got to stick and pick here at Byron Murphy. So I think a lot of Seahawks fans in particular have been hoping that Murphy was going to last to 16. I don't think there's any chance of that now that he's going to make it there. It seems very likely that I think maybe top 12 that 12 is probably the lowest. He may even fall in the end.
All right, before we run, Rob Staton, make sure you check him out. Seahawks Draft Blog does a great job covering the draft. We got about 30 seconds, Rob. Give us something that is maybe a bit of a outside-the-box thought for round one, in your opinion.
Outside the box, probably that Amarius Mims is going to go earlier than a lot of people think, and I think he's going to go ahead of people like Olu Fashanu. And just keep an eye on Darius Robinson, as I mentioned. I think teams are going to like him a lot more than the people in the media.